going live. And I think it's automatically recording, which is fantastic. Chris, I'll move next. Hello, everyone. We'll get started in a couple moments. Sorry. Christopher, I think you're picking up on some feedback.
I think that was me. I'm sorry. That must have been me. I am so sorry. For anybody's ears, I just burst. Please forgive me.
A problem. I'm promoting folks to panelists. I'm wondering if folks are having issues receiving their individual panelists link.
It doesn't work for me. It just keeps saying that the meeting will start soon.
Yeah, I ended up opening it twice accidentally. I think that's my mistake.
Interesting. Well, happy to just move you all over from attendee to panelist.
So the aptitude test in the past for Office Smarts was if you could figure out how to do double-sided copies and have it staple. Could never do that. And now it's how to get meetings, Zoom calls and team calls. It's gone from the copier to the Teams or Zoom. And I still can't do double-sided with the staple in the right spot. I always screw it up.
Hey, is Simha on?
Yes,
I saw him a moment ago.
Yeah, Simha, if it's possible, I can't read, Alexis, I can't, unfortunately, in the very light blue here, I can't read the land acknowledgement. Could you pull up the land acknowledgement and do that, Simha? You have that available easy, or do any of you?
I can bring it up if folks would.
I might be able to get this, but it's just so light.
Apologies for that.
Yeah, unseated. Where are we on time? Oh, wow. I apologize.
Not a problem at all. I did send it over. So if you look to the chat, you should be able to see it. But I will look to.
Okay, let me take a peek. Let me see if that works for me. I think I can get through. Let's see. Because the camera is on a screen that's very small, and this second, let me see if I can do this.
I'm happy to read it.
Would you? Okay, that'd be super.
Yep.
Okay, was that Paula?
Yep.
Now I just had everything disappear on me. There we go. Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
Are we ready to go?
Yes, we are ready to go, and we are live.
All right.
And have we already gone on?
Yes, we are live.
Oh, okay. Sorry to any of you who are watching this live, but you're just seeing a Luddite working on technology. I just sometimes get lost on this. I want to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Implementation Board System Planning Committee. I'm John Chelmanak, and I'll be the chair. We'll get into the meeting shortly, but I'm going to ask Paula Carvalho to go ahead and read the land designation So if you could do that, Paula.
Yep. We acknowledge that King County is located on the unceded traditional land of the Coast Salish peoples. We honor this land and its people, past and present, and we are committed to directing funding and resources to organizations led by and in support of Native and Indigenous people.
Great, thank you. And we read that at the beginning of all of our meetings here at KCRHA. And we have several of our board members on. Do we need to do a roll call?
That would be helpful for the purposes
Okay.
of minutes. Thank
Yeah,
you.
let's do a quick roll call. Alexis, could you do that, or do you want me to?
I'm happy to do that. Give me one moment.
Actually, I can go ahead. I've got the names up here. That might be one thing that I could do. So I'll go from the bottom of my screen up. Ben Moritz, are you present?
I am, sorry, John, just had to find the mute button. I'm here.
Oh, all right, gotcha. Okay, Paula Carvalho,
Here.
Simha Reddy. Simha is
Sorry,
he's
here.
acknowledging by waving. Christopher Ross.
Here.
And John Chelmanak. I do not know Abby Anderson. I don't know that we have met. Is she staff or?
She is staff. She's joining
Okay.
us today. I did want to give her a minute to introduce herself when there is time, but she is staff with KCRHA.
Okay, and Alexis Mercedes Rink is also with us as staff. Let's actually do that quick introduction because I'm going to bet that she is going to be helping us with our note taking. Abby, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks so much. Hi, everyone. My name's Abby Anderson. I use she, they pronouns. I work with Alexis on the sub-regional planning team. I am the South King County sub-regional planner, but in this capacity, like you said, John, we'll be helping with notes and other background activities, as well as helping to compile the memo and recommendations for revisions.
Great, thank you and welcome, and we really appreciate the help. Alexis, do you want to start with presentations or do we want to try to do the approval of the minutes from the last meeting?
Let's do approval of the minutes if you're feeling we have critical mass, and then we'll go into general updates.
Okay, so I believe at the end of last week, the subcommittee minutes were distributed. If you've had a chance to look at them, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the last subcommittee meeting. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The meeting minutes are approved. We're going to be talking today a little bit about more information that has come in to the agency, more comments, and we're going to take time for the implementation board to talk about some things that they would like to see and ideas that we have had. Staff has talked, and some of us have sent in some written feedback, and I'm going to let Alexis take that on. She's going to do a presentation, and then we're going to try to reserve, although we got a little bit of a late start, let's try to reserve, if we can, about 25 minutes for conversation among IB members. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I will be happy to be brief in my comments to ensure for maximum time for conversation among the board members. So for the purposes of the public, just to ground in, the purpose of this subcommittee is really to be reviewing both staff recommendations, but feedback received from community partners around revisions to the 5-year plan, and to ultimately send over a recommendation to the full implementation board on a revised 5-year plan. And so in this process, we have, as staff, been pulling together a whole lot of feedback. I know for the materials for today, there were 3 city letters included and posted on the website and sent out to the board. The cities that we've received a comment letter from regarding the plan include Bellevue, Kirkland, and Issaquah. We have not heard any comments that we're anticipating any other city-based letters, but there's a potential county letter that could be coming in that we just got word of. Further, we've received additional letters from partners, both philanthropic and a few service providers have sent over letters, and then continue to receive emailed feedback. Staff have been working to develop a pretty comprehensive revision tracker as we're tracking all of the notable feedback and just deciphering what elements of the plan it speaks to, who is kind of the sponsor of that feedback, what the nature of that, the nature of that change would imply for the effect on the strategy of the plan, and all of that is really being wrapped up and will be included in the recommendation memo that you will be receiving next week. So next week's meeting will be kind of the first look at the slate of recommendations from all of the feedback. Our team has been also reviewing all of the 640 survey responses. Each survey response has the potential for 8 separate comments, which has led us to actually 2,000 something comments for us to be reviewing. It has been a thrilling and illustrative process, but one that we are taking very seriously, and have been going through and doing some qualitative coding to really decipher and use best qualitative research methods to pull out themes. There were some initial themes that we did present to the governing committee, but making sure we're doing our due diligence to really accurately represent themes and feedback from the surveys as well. I did want to note for today, in terms of the feedback, namely that was received by the governing committee last week, the team is working on 2 major technical revisions at this stage, one of which being responsive to what governing committee members have raised, as well as what I've seen some IB members related to putting forward a kind of modeled funding options for the boards to consider around potential scenarios of funding the system. Additionally, staff are working on more robust analysis and kind of further fleshing out the strategy on how we can better leverage federal resources through Medicaid billing or foundational community supports. And so wanted to note those are 2 major technical revisions that staff are preparing kind of modeled options for, and you will see included in your materials in the kind of proposed changes tracker for next week, but wanted to note that staff are working on preparing those analyses and that language now as well. The purpose of today's session is really to hear from you all around the feedback you have on the plan, as you have had time to, hearing from your community and network, and wanting to really dedicate this session before we bring forward an additional slate of recommended changes to the plan, making time for the board to further express changes they would like to see, so we can, as staff, continue working on preparing what that would look like in the potential final version. That's my general update. Any questions on general update before I do a quick overview, regrounding, and talking, and then turning it over to the board to discuss?
Do any of you have any questions? I'm seeing shaking heads. Are we going to go through the goal, a high overview of the goals, and then we can begin to talk? That might stimulate some conversation. So let's go over that.
Wonderful. So taking us to our first goal area being dramatically reduce unsheltered homelessness. Underneath this goal, we have 3 strategy areas. The first being expand shelter and housing to meet the need. This is where primarily a lot of that housing model and work lives currently. The second strategy underneath this goal is around improving and expanding temporary housing and wraparound support for people with high acuity health needs. And then the third strategy within this goal area speaks to kind of the future vision for Partnership for Zero, really working to expand countywide.
Alexis, I'm going to interrupt you here. I'm just seeing in the chat that Okisha just sent in a message, says, I can't see myself. And I'm not 100% certain whether it didn't look to me like she was in the panelist window. Is there a way that?
I'm moving her. I see her in the attendees. I'm moving her to panelist now. There we go.
Perfect. Okay.
Hi, Okisha. Sorry about that. All right.
Okay, let's continue on. Sorry for the interruption.
I'm glad that we were able to get her in. Okay, so that was the first goal. Our second goal area here is related to restructuring the service system to improve capacity, supports, and efficiency. Underneath this goal area, we have 7 strategies. The first around redesigning the service environment. The second on how we can scale diversion to decrease inflow into homelessness. The third strategy, standardizing and supporting person-centered healing-based practices. The fourth is how we can improve severe weather response system and performance. The fifth around how we can optimize and secure funding opportunities to support services and operation. The sixth around how we can stabilize frontline staff workforce. And the seventh, growing and diversifying our portfolio of service providers. The third goal area is related to delivering accessible, accountable, and responsive services. And we have 4 strategies within this. The first, refine and tailor processes for the Ombuds Office to further provide support for those seeking accountability. Then we have developing web and mobile-based communication channels for program participants to continuously provide feedback on their experience. The third, to develop and support an integrated approach to data that allows for client access and autonomy. And then the fourth, supporting accurate and up-to-date information around resource availability. Our fourth goal within the 5-year plan speaks to reducing the impact of racism on people experiencing homelessness. And we have 2 strategies here, on the first being how we can ensure racial equity in service provision, and the second related to data collection to really better understand how homelessness is experienced by Black, African American, Indigenous and Native, and other racial minorities. The fifth strategy is around our families with children who may be experiencing this. We have 3 strategies within here: expanding evidence-based program interventions to prevent family homelessness, partnering with healthcare and school systems to improve early warning systems, prevention, and wraparound services, and then improving coordination between homeless service providers and community supports to ensure families experiencing homelessness have rapid pathways to housing.
Chris, can you mute
Chris?
yourself? I feel like we're getting a lot of feedback from you.
There we go. Thank you. I was just about, thanks for doing that, Paula. I was just about to do the same.
Thank you both. And taking us to our 6th goal area around every youth and young adult has a home, we have developing a youth young adult coordinating body to systematize cross-system alignment and strategy, expanding housing and programmatic interventions for youth and young adults informed by evidence-based practices and tied to identified housing and service gaps. And our last goal area here, there was an error on my slides, apologies. Our last goal area here is around how the region acts as one to address homelessness. Within this goal area, we have 3 strategies. The first being to partner with cities in King County to consolidate and streamline funding for homelessness services. The second, how coordinated entry can serve as a foundational pathway for temporary and permanent housing connections. And the third strategy, developing our coordinated sub-regional implementation plans, really informed by unique characteristics and assets across of our communities across King County. And so that's a brief overview of the various goal areas, and I will turn it back to the chair to facilitate discussion and feedback from the board on the goals and strategies within the plan.
Okay. Did you want to go over any ideas that you have gotten so far from IB board members, or do we want to just launch in? You know, let's just launch in here. So who would? It's always fun to be the first person, but who would like to go first and maybe get our conversation started this afternoon? But just go ahead and open your mic and go for it.
So John, I'll dive in.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can. At least I can.
If you can't hear me, okay, my connection's not great. So if you can't hear me, just let me know and I'll dial in by phone. So
go ahead, we're good.
Okay, so thank you, Alexis, for that overview. Just to confirm, those goal areas that you just presented, those are the same that were in the plan, right? That wasn't a change or anything, was it?
Correct. That is the same as what was in the draft plan that was posted.
Okay, cool. So I mean, it's impossible to argue with any of those things, right? Every one of those is a really noble and worthy goal. I think that, there's probably a lot of meat once we get into the details of what, when, and how. But my thinking here about how we can move the plan forward is really about taking a lot of the ideas and integrating it into a framework that allows for a bit more clarity and a bit more confidence in the implementation. And when I have spoken to members of the public and have read all the press coverage, there's really a lot of focus specifically on what we're going to do on the unhoused population that's out there. And so, if you think about like, how can we take this plan and make it in something that really can be engaged on, I think that the focus of it needs to shift to what can we do to move people inside as quickly as possible. And given that the major barrier to doing that is the availability of emergency housing or shelter, the focus of the plan really should be on trying to stand that up. And when you look at all of the numbers that are in the plan and the reaction to those numbers and whether the numbers are feasible or infeasible, it really focuses on what kind of shelter do we need to build. And so I asked Alexis to send around sort of a short, just kind of one-page view of what I think we should ask for in the plan. And it's almost orthogonal to the list of goal areas that Alexis just presented. Those things are all good. I don't think any one of those is wrong. But what I'd like to see is really a plan that's a bit more simple and has, as its main objective, bringing people inside, and then has clarity on what types of housing we are going to need to add, and temporary or emergency housing we're going to need to add to be able to achieve that mission. And then to have what I will call a business model that builds up from the unit costs for each one of those housing types into a financial plan that we think is achievable. And if any of you were on the governing committee meeting last week, you would have heard Mayor Harrell refer to kind of 3 scenarios for the financial plan, meaning how much can we spend. One scenario would be a current course and speed where we have our current funding on the order of $300 million and it grows incrementally every year, 5 or 10% per year. A second scenario would be perhaps what we could call a regional scale up, where on a per capita basis, other communities join the city of Seattle, match the funding, and then we end up in a range of probably what will be around $500 million a year. And then if we want to have an unconstrained approach where we get new funding, whether it's for Medicare or anywhere else, to show what we could do with unlimited funding, I think that's fine too. But in order for me to be comfortable with a plan that we can implement, I think we need to start with a clear objective. We need to move into a very simple model showing how much housing of what type needs to be built. And then we need to have a financial plan that backs that up. It shows built up from unit costs. How can we ensure that we can fit that within our budget? So that's kind of rather than specific feedback on any one of those goal areas, that's sort of a framework for how I think we might be able to analyze the plan coming out of it. So I'll pause there, and you guys have in your inbox the short memo that lays out those areas, which I'm happy to engage on now or later. But I would love to hear from the others as well, how you're reacting to this.
Just trying to get off mute there, sorry. Anybody have a reaction, or would you like to does anybody else have a topic area that they would like to discuss?
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Christopher.
You're on mute.
Seema, you started. Please be my guest. I'll go after you.
Oh, sure. I talk enough. Christopher, why don't you go ahead? I'll go after you.
I won't be nearly as articulate as Ben, but I will say that no matter how big the agency is, I have struggled with the fact that it's trying to do too much, and there is a lot in this plan, and it doesn't feel like it is scaled for success. And there is no explanation as to how it could actually achieve all those things successfully. So there's 7 big initiatives broken. Well, I mean, I haven't used the right term. There's 7 priorities. There are at least, I think, 30 to 40 initiatives, strategies, and that just feels like it's unscalable. And there's no indication of how over the course of the next 3 years, 3 to 5 years, those would all be activated to really be a solution in a ready enough time. So the number and scalability is a real concern. And it's not that it's a prove it to me. It's just, I don't know if there's a plan to get there. And if there is one, I don't see it. And it links to the second one, and that's the dollars. And for me, the hope would be that if you have been presented with a budget of 300 million, just rounding it up, it's easier. Let's just say it's 300 million. What can you do with the 300 million? And instead, what we have is a plan that shows what we can do with multi-billion. And it doesn't answer the question, what can you do with the current dollars that you have now? And I'm not sure it's within the project's objective to say, we're only going to give you the right answer, cost be darned, as opposed to you asked us to solve it with the tools that we have in front of us. I kind of, my favorite and silliest analogy is the whole Apollo 13 famous scene in the movie where he walks into the room and pours over the stuff on the table and says, this is all they have up in space to get that module down. How are we going to use these pieces to get them down? Well, if we poured it out, all we have is the 300 million and the resources that the King County Regional Homeless Authority has. How would you make those work in the current needs? And then if you have to add things, that's a different conversation. I would love to have seen the original plan structured with there's no more than what we currently have. This is how we could solve it. And then if it could be an and there is a scalable way to get to the additional resources and dollars, we would stack rank. The very first priority would be this one, and then the second priority. And then of course, more money is not the problem. It's then determining what's the most logical way to be spending it. So those would be the two: too much and too costly.
Okay, Christopher, let me see. Okay, yeah, I am off mute. Thank you. Simha, I'm going to have you go. I actually want to come back to Christopher's comment, and because one of mine that I sent in sort of ties with that, and it was something Councilmember Balducci said at the governing board meeting. But Simha, why don't you go ahead?
Oh, sure. Thanks, John. I think I disagree a little bit. I actually do. I see a lot of hope in this particular plan. I see a lot of. I'll admit, I don't think it's written with the clarity that it needs to be. Sorry to say. And I think the feedback that's been kind of consistent and included in the letters from our colleagues on the East Side were, concerns around, hey, how are we going to pay for this? Right? Like, can you tell us a little bit more about the cost and how you get to that cost, right? Like real clarity around that. And this issue of prioritization, right? Like, where do we start first? And I think those are both things you are focused on. And as we sort of are thinking about the revision and how we talk about this, I guess the way that I see this plan is a little bit of, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? That we can both, number one, point to if we are actually going to solve this problem and get to a crisis response system that is sufficient to bring people into safety, this is what it's going to take. Like I think as a community, we need to know what that number is, or ballparkish number, right? And the scale of the issue. We need that piece to know where we're aiming for.
Yeah.
And then the second, but in the meantime, right? Like, and I think this is the part that hasn't been clear or wasn't as clear in the draft, was what are our first steps, right? Because we don't have those billions of dollars right this moment. We have this, $250 to $300 million, and where do we begin? And I think that, it leads to that other kind of concern from some of our colleagues that, you know, worried about stability, right? Like, how do we maintain the system we have as we grow? And, you know, when we think about cost, I think something that is going to be, you know, I would love to see more sort of background material on kind of how we determine cost of different housing models. But the other, I think something that we really need to think carefully about, and this ties back to sort of the issue of metrics that we talk about a lot, or have, you know, need to be talking about a lot. When you say cost of a particular temporary housing model, right? Like, because I think that's the framing that we've just described: permanent housing and temporary housing, rather than shelter, emergency housing, et cetera. Let's call it temporary housing, inclusive of everything from tiny homes to congregate shelter to emergency, you know, interim housing or whatever. When you talk about the cost of any particular type, each of them has specific advantages and disadvantages. Time to start up, for example, like, you know, how much, like how difficult it is to staff, the differing sort of acceptability to people, which is something that we really focused on in this draft. But also things like, how are we going to really measure? Are we going to be measuring by cost per positive housing exit, or time to positive housing exit? Complexity of patients cared for, right? Like, there are shelters that really just don't take, you know, well, temporary housing. There's some temporary housing places that are essentially nursing homes, and there are some that, you know, take people who are doing reasonably well and will be able to get out on their own. And that's a pretty variable, both in terms of cost and likelihood of success, I guess. I'm rambling a little bit now, but I generally agree that we need to prioritize and, like, make it clear what our next steps are going to be. And my hope is that the team is already working on that. I want us to maintain, like, what that, from my perspective, I want us to maintain that number of, like, here's what it would take to actually achieve full success, but with interim steps in between, and more background on cost with that indicates both that is takes into account, like, the metrics we're really looking for in terms of success. All right, I'll stop talking now.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just realizing that from an equity lens, I failed miserably. I've gone to all of the males and not to the females who are on the IB. So I failed my job today. Paula or Okisha, would you like to go next?
I'm happy to weigh in, and John, never apologize. I do not need to be invited to a conversation. But I will say I'm kind of with Simha, but I also, like, I do understand that the price tag, sorry, I was moving around my office. I understand that the price tag is really high. But I also, you know, I listened to the governing meeting and, you know, was a part of the implementation board meeting, obviously. And I think that we keep coming back to, no one thinks what the KCRHA budget has is going to solve the problem. So, I mean, I guess I do kind of, I think it was Christopher that had said this, like, this idea of, like, what we have and what can get done. And then, like, kind of like, what is the pie in the sky? Like, if there was, like, a tiered approach, that makes sense. But I mean, I think hands down, all of our leaders don't think that the budget that we currently have is going to solve the problem. And I think if we thought that that was it, I mean, for how much resources we have in the state, we could have solved homelessness if it was just money. But it isn't just the money. I mean, it's money, it's time, it's the infrastructure, it's a lot of things that, like, have to, like, go into play here. So yeah, I mean, I guess maybe if there was, like, kind of like a tiered approach, I understand that would, like, really kind of push out the timeline, and it would be a lot of, like, it would take a lot of input, I think, to, like, create that by April, but I could see a use for that.
Great, thank you, Paula. Okisha, would you have anything on here?
I kind of like what Paula, well, not kind of, I like what Paula said. I am a little confused by the when you guys say tiered approach, but I know that I do think about like the things that are in place that we already have, like fire shelters and things like that. When we, hopefully build new ones and things like that, that, the screening or criteria is different, a lot different. Um, by the way that we even hire people or, the approach to getting people in, I think should be a lot different. And I think that can aid in, you know, um, dismantling certain structures and the way that the homeless population grows or digresses or anything like that. But I do think there's a lot of places that are already existing that need to be reconstructed, and I think we can get more people in. But I don't know. I disagree to a lot of what Paula said, but um, or many of you guys said, but I just think the things that are existing need to be reconstructed and then model what what money we put into new things could also look like, if that makes sense. Um, I've said it in different ways, different times with different settings. So it's kind of like, burnout. Like I'm kind of, tired, not tired of saying it, but, I don't want to sound like the same broken record when I say it. But yeah, I just think things need to be redone, reconsidered, and then we, that input that we've heard over the last few years and reconstruct before we just throw money at any project, that it's considered like the whole way through, if that makes sense.
As I listen,
Okay.
as I listen to what we're saying, I think people are saying almost the same thing in different ways. One, I'm hearing, don't lose the fact that there is a large price tag to making sure that everyone is able to be housed. That is a large price tag. But I'm also hearing, and I watched some of the governing board meeting, is that it's unreasonable to expect that we are going to be at those levels of funding in the very near future. So the things that I am looking for is the probably my largest concern with the plan is it takes roofs that we can put over people's heads off of the plate and goes to one type of roof, essentially, when what we need are more roofs. I think we need to look at things in some different ways. I read not surprisingly, since I've worked a lot in the Bellevue and Issaquah and Kirkland area on this issue. I'm not surprised that they're saying don't take congregate housing off. The 4 major shelters here are congregate housing, and we're about to open a brand new shelter for that. So don't take those off the table. And here they're running at over 90% occupancy. So people are using them. That may be a special type of person who is in a homeless situation. I don't know. I understand the issues that some of the shelters in Seattle have had, so don't take those off. I've talked about other types of manufactured housing. I was just trying to pull up some. I don't know if I can share my screen to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Is that possible from where I am? I'm looking. Yeah, here it is. So if I were to do, now this really worries me, but I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to share this screen. And are you looking at some something called MADI?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to go here. This is an Italian manufacturer. I had a presentation from them a number of years ago, but this is one of the, it's still expensive, but it's less pricey than building something. And I'll just go to show you that this type of housing is available at, more reasonable prices than going to building from brick and mortar or from sticks. So this company, again, it's MADI. You can go in and take a look at their brochure. I'm just looking here to see, do I have LEAP still up? Yeah, let me go over here. This is a company that also does, it's called LEAP. I mean, here's a very simple structure that they have. These are natural materials, healthy homes, as they say. I am not suggesting pools that are affordable housing necessarily. But again, here are types of housings that are done modularly that, again, are far more expensive than a tiny home, but are a true, complete, full home. So let me take. Do I just hit new share to stop sharing? I think that
There
must
should
be.
be a share button that's red.
There it is, stop sharing. Got it. Okay, I'm going to do that and come back. But those are things that are available that I know we're talking about, maybe that we would be getting some properties maybe that might be in single family neighborhoods. These could be very acceptable in those neighborhoods. So, that's kind of what I'm looking for. And finally, on the cost, and I had the opportunity to work very closely with her over 12 years and think very highly of Councilmember Balducci. She said, she said, give us an idea of what you can do under the current budget. Give us an idea on what you can do with an enhanced budget, and give us a timeline, an obvious a way of getting there if you got everything that you wanted. And I had a conversation with her earlier this week, and I said, well, what if on that current budget, because we all know that's not going to go far enough, what if we did a smaller increase in it, maybe assumed that some cities would come in 2024, maybe some other suburban cities would come in 2025, kind of what's reasonable for some of those cities to come in with, remembering that their tax bases are much less than the city of Seattle. I think Seattle's tax base is probably 5 to 6 times that of Bellevue, and Bellevue is the next largest tax base in the county. I'll stop there. Again, we've got a few more minutes. We've got 15 minutes. Who else would like to weigh in or talk about some of it?
John, is it okay if I weigh in briefly?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just go ahead.
I think 2 pieces. One, as we think about cost, one thing we should be careful of is this idea that we are somehow going to be able to pay for anywhere near the full cost with local funds. I mean, that's crazy, right? Like that's essentially a non-starter, is my understanding. And our colleagues on the east side in their letters, and I think others have pointed to, like, hey, this is a state and federal issue as well. What I would really like to see as we're moving forward in the plan is, hey, is there actually a pathway towards significantly increased funding through federal programming, whatever that might look like, Medicaid reimbursement, 1050 waivers, like all the things, right? Is there a path forward in terms of that? The second point I just wanted to make is, when we think about this broad category of temporary housing, I think we often want to have a solution, like what is the best shelter, right? Or what is the best temporary housing? And I think the best is really that we have a diverse portfolio, and it may be, and I think us getting the draft as we have it now sort of tries to pin us down to a particular percentage of X, Y, and Z types, where in fact, my hope would be that as time goes along, we're actually reassessing that constantly, right? Based on improvements in each category. Like maybe congregate shelter turns out to be fantastic, right? Like if we have congregate shelters that are really doing amazing work, or tiny homes or emergency housing, whatever it might be. Anyway, my hope would be that we create a diverse portfolio so that there's always something for the that fits people's needs, and that we are reassessing constantly to determine where we continue to grow. I'll stop there.
Okay, Christopher, I saw a little note here in the chat. Did you want to have something to say? You didn't. Okay. Is Ben okay? Who else would like to go? Paula or Keisha? Do you have anything more to say? Ben, you're out there, I think, too, although now I'm not. Oh, there you are.
I think Ben's hand is up.
You moved to the left-hand side of the screen. I'm sorry, upper left.
Sorry. So somehow I just want to react to what you're saying, because I think this is maybe Paula, going back to what you said as well, and I think touching a little bit on Keisha, I don't disagree that we should have an aspirational framework for what it takes to end homelessness once and for all in our region. And I do not shy away from the billion-dollar price tags that will require. I am very much, I've devoted my career to affordable housing. I'm very much aware that there is not enough of it, and that it is very expensive and challenging to build it. I wonder if we might not be able to have a bifurcated approach here that might be able to address both, where we can both lay out, here's what we think the ultimate solution looks like, and that could be a policy framework that brings in other groups, the housing authorities and the federal government and all stakeholders to really address the issue, but at the same time could give us a plan that we can execute against in the next year or two. And if that's well done, then within the next year or two, we will have the I'm sorry. We'll have, if the next year or two, we'll have a clear set of metrics that we can go and implement against, and we will be building the track record that's needed to go and get that much larger piece of funding down the road. And so it may be a almost two separate documents, or perhaps two different sections in the document, that will allow us to be both tactical in the near term as well as aspirational in the long term. Apologies for the background noise.
That is okay. Anyone else?
Oh, I saw Alexis put her hand up.
Okay, I have trouble seeing where. Oh, Alexis, you're okay. Go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to ask a question as staff, just to get further direction from the board, because as the chair noted, it sounds like folks are coalescing around this idea, wanting to understand, wanting to keep a North Star, but understanding a bit more what could modeled intermediary options look like. And so as staff are starting to go kind of develop these options, I'm wondering what does that look like? What are those intermediary steps? That feels like kind of the next piece. And I think we're, as we're going back to the, not the drawing board, but we're going back to kind of assemble those, just doing to get your insight into maybe what some potential options could be, knowing that we can put together a slate of options while we're going and doing these calculations. So wanted to pose that question before we closed out, since there did seem to be some broad agreement that is something the board would like to see.
So let me ask, just to clarify, Alexis, you're asking us, what do you, again, what, so is it are you asking, is it $1 billion increase, or model a $4 billion increase versus I guess I'm asking that's one of the questions I would have. And the other is, I know we can't get wrapped around the axle because some of the dollar figures are about permanent housing. So maybe it is what you can do with a 10 or 15% increase. It's hard for me to know. I would want to know, because in the plan, and Mark has said this a couple of times, that this region is sort of leaving money on the table with at least one of the federal programs. So if that's the case, why have we been leaving it on the table? Is there a reason? And second, how much could we possibly, what do we think we could possibly get for that? So that can be a building block to, frankly, to add into the current resource one, because I want to see something more than the current resource.
To speak to those, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think that's the piece. So to speak to your first point around, what's kind of the metric or thing that we're looking at? Are we looking at increasing the budget by X amount, and what kind of result does that yield? Or are we looking at something like an increase in if we up our annual production of temporary units of housing by 15%, what does that look like? I think similarly, we're all spinning in like, what does that intermediary step look like? What kind of metric are we looking at? Are we looking by units, exits to permanent housing? And knowing that, as Chair Reddy had mentioned also earlier, and there's a lot to an exit to permanent housing, especially when we look at the needs that folks may have and the diversity of needs. So it is a little open-ended what I'm asking, but trying to get some guidance as we try and work as staff to figure out what could an intermediary kind of modeled option look like.
Okay, what do others think about what an intermediate or intermediary option could be? And I'm just checking the chat here for something.
Well, I know we only have 5 minutes left, so I don't want to. I don't know if we can go long. I really would like to know from Alexis how this isn't answering your question specifically, but how are you taking all this information and ultimately changing the documents? I feel like we're running out of time. I mean, it's pressing, and I'm curious what the thoughts are. If I were to give them specific answer to the first question, though, honestly, if someone handed me a business plan, I would like to think that it's, to use the term, shovel ready. It's ready to execute. We have the funding for it. This is the materials that are currently in place. This is the resources that we have. We don't have to go invent something or go try to champion for money. We could do this. So call it what you want, shovel ready or turnkey ready plan. That would be, to me, the baseline. If you brought no new dollars into King County, if you couldn't capture any other additional taxation dollars or anything else, which I think would be a mistake to bank it on that, here's what you can do. And then if you could bring in more money and develop it as tranches, or as Benjamin maybe mentioned, a bifurcated plan that is, if you could get all the dollars, however you want to structure that. But I would like to at least have a baseline plan that is turnkey ready based on the resources that we have. And I gotta say, with the thousands of hours that people have spent trying to solve this, tens of thousands of hours over the course of the years, there has been a lot of mind share to get here. I can't believe that we're at let's put together a plan to get started. It's like, it's already halfway there. This is about coalescing the best practices and stopping the ones that are not productive. So I can't imagine that with the dollars flowing through and the intense individuals like yourselves, all committed to solving this, that we aren't at a turnkey ready plan. And it feels like this huge plan that spends the first 45 pages talking about what would require billions of dollars for future is not a turnkey plan. This is a plan that says, okay, put on your backpack and let's go. And the journey starts on the word go, as opposed to, we should already be able to implement a lot of these pieces.
Okay. And I think some of them are being implemented. Simha, was that you who was going to go?
If you want to go ahead, John.
No, I just, there is a question in the chat from Coalition on Homelessness. And Alexis, I'm really sorry for mentioning, I know it's a federal program, and I know there's mention of it in the, do you know what that program is off the top of your head?
Yes, the current reference in the draft plan is around foundational community supports. And as we were looking at other resources like Medicaid, and I believe the section 1115 waiver as well, all of those types of programs. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I know a lot of acronyms. I don't know that many acronyms in the homeless side of everything. Simha, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, you know, I generally agree. Like, I think the idea of like making sure that both the public and like we all understand what is happening this next 1 and 2 years, right? Where even if we were to go try to move towards really incorporating foundational community supports or, you know, Medicaid into the system and like, you know, moving towards kind of a fee for service case management approach, like that's a big transition, right, for providers to do. And we're not going to do that in the first year. So knowing what are we going to look like in a year or two from now would be great. But like part of the plan, and I think this is the part that I think we really need to flesh out, is if we think there is a realistic way of bringing in enough dollars that we, you know, it's unlikely to be money to like build things. It's probably more likely to be money to provide services. How much money can we bring in that way? And like that is part of getting money is part of the plan, right? Going and getting that should be like, in fact, I think it may even be one of our sub goals. But fleshing that out would be really wonderful to see.
We are at the 1 hour mark, but if people can stay for another minute, and a few other people have comment, I would say let's keep going for another 5 minutes. And does anyone else have anything for today? I am not seeing reaction at the moment from folks. Yeah.
So
yes.
John, I just want to I just want to sum up. I think that this is a really helpful conversation and is going to lead to some, I think it'll lead to a very clear set of issues to take back to the staff and to the full board around what is the purpose of the plan. I think it might be worth just, maybe we could do a quick sort of run around of like, are there any other hot button issues? I know, John, you mentioned in the last meeting, there was the role of faith-based communities. Is there anything else that we want to give Alexis as she pulls together the issue list to discuss in the next meeting? Because perhaps others have some specific issues like that. I know tiny house villages is a specific one. You mentioned that in the context of other forms of modular units. It seems like something we should discuss. I would also just throw on there the role of sweeps and encampment clearances is something that I think is pretty foundational to the role of the authority that we need to discuss. Perhaps others have other just quick shots like that we can just put on the agenda to dig into further.
I'm curious about our approach to the geriatric situation. Like I know this had come up earlier, and there's a small. What are we gonna do about our aging population that's experiencing homelessness? Is one thing that I'd love to hear more about. And we talk a little bit about the medical and health connection piece under sort of types of housing, but understanding what our connection will be to like the true medical respite that already exists, like how that plays a role. I'd like to see a little bit more about how we're connecting to the health systems. But I agree with Ben touching on it.
Okay, do we have an agenda item for next week when we meet, Alexis? Is that where we're going to be getting the large report on input?
Yes, that will be this subcommittee's first look at that very large report, with a promise that we'll be spending the next couple of weeks in a scheduled breakdown, taking up issue by issue area, but that will be the kind of the first look, and we can take up perhaps a select number of matters, as I know you all just voiced some specific topics to bring for conversation, so maybe we can focus the conversation around those. But you all will have the full revision memo in time for your next meeting, and also want to voice that the following week will be the March implementation board meeting, where you all will be bringing for discussion this space, and if there's any consideration for rescheduling and even lengthening these meetings to accommodate for the deliberations to go on over the next couple weeks, that's when that will happen.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So we'll be back again at 3 o'clock next week. And I think that is March 3rd. Is that correct? Yeah. So March 3rd, we'll be back on 3 p.m. to have the discussion. We'll be going over a lot of the input that has been received. Is there any objection to ending the meeting, to adjourning? Anybody object? I am seeing no one who objects to adjourning. Thank you all for participating today. I appreciate it. And I think, you know, our goal is to make it a better report, a report that can be implemented, and action steps that get people off of the street. I think if we continue to focus on that, we'll be successful. Great. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for
Call the meeting adjourned. Oh, no problem. Thank you, Christopher. Yep. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.